Welcome to the Teacher's Toolkit for Literacy, the free podcast for motivated teachers and school leaders who want to inspire their students and school community in literacy learning. Make sure you subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast player, and for more amazing literacy resources, check out the show notes provided with every episode.
Hi, I'm Sharon and I'm the host of A Teacher's Toolkit for Literacy. In every Toolkit episode, we bring you specific resources, tools, strategies, tips, techniques to help you in your job as a teacher of literacy. Firstly, we acknowledge and pay our respects to the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians whose ancestral lands we gather on. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of the Kaurna people to country, and we respect and value their past, present and ongoing connection to the land and cultural beliefs. And welcome, Phil.
Thanks, Sharon, and welcome back to another podcast. And great to have you all back here again. And welcome, Sharon.
Thanks, Phil. Hi, everybody.
And before we talk about our topic today, I thought we'd just talk a little bit about a wonderful festival that's going on in Adelaide, where we live. It's called the Adelaide Festival, and it's also got another festival called the Fringe. And it's one of the biggest arts festivals in the Southern Hemisphere. And we are very fortunate to have it here in South Australia. But talking about the arts generally, a wonderful thing to have in our schools. Music, art, drama, dance, all those are such a nourishing aspect of our teaching and to be fully encouraged in our school life. Now, Sharon, today we're talking about our topic, which is conferring. And conferring is another way of finding out more about our children. And we were working in a school recently, and Sharon came back from the school talking about how she had some wonderful experiences with conferring in classrooms with students and their teachers. And I thought it'd be great to make that into a podcast where we just share those stories and see if there would be any connection that you could make with your own work in your own classroom where you confer with children. And conferring, of course, is having a kind of a talk or an interview with a child and finding out as much as you can about what they're doing. And then that can lead you on to what you're going to do with your own teaching in your classroom. So, Sharon, can you tell us about some of those experiences you've had with conferring?
Okay, thanks, Phil. It's always a privilege to be able to, in schools, work with students. And in this instance, this was an opportunity to actually model the conferring process with older students, so with year 3 through to year 6. You said something important about conferring being a way of learning about our students, and conferring is also a really important way for us to help our students. So we want to be able to, when conferring, and I'll talk through really the process that I used for conferring with students. I'll talk about tools and processes and then give examples from 4 or 5 students that I worked with or that I conferred with. I can remember quite clearly the day that I realised, not in this trip, but many years ago, that if I was conferring with children and I was keeping all of the information about what they did, so if I'm observing or listening to a child read and observing what they're doing, I want to be able to do something with that for the child right there and then. I don't want to store my notes away and think, right, what will I do with that down the track, or what will I do with that, for, a small group, or I want to actually make that moment with them an on-the-spot learning opportunity. So what I'm going to talk through in working with children is the tool that we were using to guide the conferring is a tool that across the year 3 to 6 is going to be a common tool. And we've actually done a podcast on this tool, and that's the Listening to Reading, Watching While Writing protocol.
Which is on a website that we link to.
Yes. So it's freely available. So Duke and her team, Duke Ward and Klingelhoffer, have created the Listening to Reading, Watching While Writing protocol, and it's freely available to anyone and off their website, where there's also examples of it being used. But the school where these stories are coming from are deciding on using this as a tool to guide the collection of information, importantly, guiding what we're going to find out about readers. And I also want to just link it to the active view of reading that Duke and Cartwright have developed, which this protocol represents. So it's not only representing what strategies that our readers are using, but it's looking at that word recognition, it's looking at comprehension, but it's also looking at all the bridging processes that they refer to. Print concepts, reading fluency, vocab knowledge, word knowledge, so morphological and graphophonological, and the flexibility of using all those things. So it's quite, the sheet looks quite heavy in a sense, but it's divided into those sections and can let us really, when we know what's there, can really guide us as teacher to look in on that sheet. So we will link in this podcast the sheet that the school that I'm working with have created their own version of the Listening to Reading, Watching While Writing protocol, and they've focused just on the reading part, but we will link the complete protocol here because, so as I'm talking, it will make sense if you're seeing where I got information from. How did I know where to look and where to find things and how to make decisions about what to record and what to teach? Because I want in a conference to be able to leave students with a strategy that they've already practiced with me and that they will take into their own reading. So it's a strategy goal that they have.
While you're conferring with them, they practice that strategy briefly with you.
Yes.
Before they go off and try that in their own independent reading.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. And so it's actually limiting this to a 5-minute conference.
Yep.
And in that conference, because we want the conference to be an opportunity to just catch what a student is doing effectively and not effectively.
Which can't really be done by a multiple choice test. It's something that can be done while you're with them and you're seeing it happen.
Yes.
And you're and you've got your protocol sheet there, but you're actually seeing them do it with their own book that they're reading, Sharon,
yes.
is it?
Yes.
The book that they really is
the one that they are currently working with.
Yeah.
And essentially what we're aiming to give them in this conferring situation, just by listening and observing them read for about a paragraph, because I'm talking about with older readers here. I think I mentioned that we're really talking that 3 to 6 and what they're doing with texts and how we are nudging them along, in fact, giving them a strategy that helps them to fix up a difficulty that they are having right now. So in some ways it's almost like a fix-up strategy.
Yep.
But we're being very clear about what the strategy is that they can be using, that they're currently not using, that can actually fix up something that they're doing right now.
And we are going to give some examples of what you've done.
Yes.
And we will then be able to, well, we just hope that there's some language, there's some turns of phrase, there's some sort of technique that what you've done with these students that may be useful to people in their own conferring, knowing that it's not going to be showing you everything you can do or all the knowledge that you need, but it's a start. And we might do this another time where we've come across some other students and here's some other experiences where we've done it, and there might be little takeaways that you can take away that will help with your conferring process.
Yeah, and if nothing else, it's kind of like we've started out with using this listening to reading protocol because, well, the more revised version came out in 2023. So we're talking about working with something very current, and we're also talking about really a professional inquiry.
Yeah.
How can this be used? How might this tool elevate, inform, guide our conferring with students?
How can I get better as a teacher, whatever stage I'm at, even if I'm just starting or I've been doing it for a few years or whatever stage I'm at, what's some little tips I can pick up that can help me?
But also a professional inquiry into how might I be able to... We all use different ways of conferring, and so this isn't about trying to standardise conferring, but this is considering how might a tool, a recording tool, be used over a span of time, because we'll keep working on this one sheet, this A3 size sheet. So for this school, we've talked about, right, what if we use that for a semester? What if we use that for 2 terms and we're recording on that one sheet each time we confer with students? And in doing that, we are really catching in one place then the things that our students are doing, that we're noticing, but that we're also able to say, right, that's a strategy I need to teach. That's a strategy I need to teach. And we set that as a goal for them, that it's really building a picture across all the areas of reading that get more complex as our readers grow in age and with the complexity of text that they work with. So I guess that's also the other thing to keep in mind here, is that it's an inquiry. This was an inquiry into how we can not only confer, but how we can build pictures of our students as readers, not just from a multiple choice assessment that says, oh, they're, is it this about what is it about the reader? And if we look at that active view of reading, what are all those processes that students are undertaking that we can find out about?
And the protocol helps us with what we're looking for.
Yeah.
So that's a really important part of this. But let's get on now,
to the stories.
To the stories,
yes.
Sharon. Yep.
All right. So let me talk through it. I'm going to start with a Year 3 student in the first instance. I was allotted, a 5-minute slot to be able to listen to this young man read to me, and for me to listen, observe and note on the protocol, and then decide what I would teach as the goal. So as he came to read, and this is what fascinates me and I think is an important thing about when we say to students we are going to listen to them read and we're doing that to help them, I'm fascinated by how often children then, and I guess that's important language that I'm already using in the conference, they are reading to me so I can listen and observe so that I can help them. So it's not a test, it's not an assessment. Why I'm saying this is so valuable to say that is I'm going to give some examples today of children who immediately tell me what they struggle with reading. So they've got their own awareness of what it is that they find difficult, and it's almost like with a sigh of relief that they go, oh, that's good, you'll be able to help me. So that in itself, how we begin that conference with a child matters. So just saying that, of course I've said it because these children don't know me, and so I'm explaining the intention of the conference to them. But I think we should be reminding our students of that when we confer with them. What is the purpose? That we're here to help And so by listening, observing, that is what we as a teacher will then be able to use to give them a strategy to move forward.
And giving them the feedback that they need to move forward.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So the next first story.
So this young man has come to me and he's got a chapter book, so an early chapter book, has some graphics in it, and he tells me straight away that when he's reading, he finds it difficult to remember what he's reading. So he reads away, and I let him read so it's about 3 paragraphs. And what do I notice? I notice he's got his eyes on the page entirely. And his decoding, he's got good strategies. I've written down some words because there's a section in there of words that are read correctly as they're reading. And so I've written some of those down and some quite complex words, even though it's a very simple chapter book. So I get a good sense of what he's doing in terms of his word strategy skills. And I also notice, and so I ask him, I said, tell me about, do you find it helpful, to have your finger, running along with your reading? He said, yes, that really helps me to focus more on my reading. And I said, right, so if that's a useful strategy, keep doing that. So there's 2 paragraphs on that page, and those paragraphs are made up of a sentence each. So when it comes to us, just ask him, so tell me about what you've read, because remember, he's already said to me, I find it difficult to remember what I read. So there's 2 sentences there. We close the book or just put the book aside. I get him to look at me, tell me about what you've read. So is your mind really in the book? Right, he says, right, tells me exactly what's happening there. We get to the 3rd paragraph, which is much longer, and he said, I can't remember any of it. So that's a minute of reading or so, 3 paragraphs that he's read. He said, and he's already told me that's what I want help with. We go back to that 3rd paragraph and I say, okay, read through. As you're reading it, I know how much you're keeping your eyes in the book or in the paragraph. Now I want you to really keep your mind in the book or in the paragraph. So that's what he does. He reads it again, read it out loud, then looked at me to tell me what that paragraph was about. And he said, oh my goodness, it's really in my mind.
Mm.
So now, just by those words alone, so as you reread this, keep your mind in the book. I can see you've got your eyes in the book, but now keep your mind in the book. And he didn't look back to the book to help him. He just looked at me and he said, it's in my mind, and told me what that paragraph was about. So I said, okay, what's the strategy? What have we learned from this? He said, I'm good at keeping my eyes in the book. Now I need to keep my mind in the book. And he said, do you know what's really going to help me? Is if I do that at the end of each page of my book. If I say to myself, even if I just say it in my own head, not to somebody else, but he said, I'm going to do that at the end of each page. And he said, I couldn't have some post-it notes, could I? And I said, oh, yes, of course you can. He said, could I, at the end of each page, could I just jot what I know from that page? And I want to do that for each page, because then tomorrow or the next day when I come back to it, I have got a reminder. I can read my little review for each page and I will be able to keep my mind on what's coming next. So essentially what he's now explaining is a strategy to help him not only keep his mind in that paragraph, but to keep his mind now in an ongoing chapter book. And that's where he was having difficulty. This was the first early chapter book that he'd started reading, and it was this holding across the chapters that he was finding so difficult.
I think that would be a common problem amongst students.
Yeah. But aren't you amazed of what he could tell was already his difficulty? Now, he opened up with that.
Did you prompt him to say that?
I know that I'd have said something about, I do know how I started.
Mm-hmm.
He came with this, chapter book. He's year 3. It's quite a simple chapter book. And I'm not making a judgment on him, but I'm interested to know where he is in chapter book reading. So to me, it's looking like he is early in his chapter book reading stage. And so I said to him, you have a chapter book. And he said, I've just started reading chapter books.
Right.
And so that's already giving me some information about what he is bringing to the task of, all right, so he's early into chapter books. Has he got strategy then for holding information across the chapters? And then he reveals to me that he finds it difficult even to hold his mind, on the page.
Yep.
So that question or that observation, you have a chapter book. Tell me about it. Goes, I've just started reading chapter books. Now that's an observation and a noting for me.
A couple of things. You gave him that strategy of put your mind into the book. Now, I would have probably known that, but is there a place in your career where you got that?
Yeah. I'm actually going to reference now a resource that gives me good language for strategy teaching and for knowing what to notice. So I absolutely love the protocol for focusing me in on, what is it that I'm looking for. And yes, people can probably hear my, older woman voice. Yes, I've been teaching for a long time.
I thought you were 21.
Yeah, we're always 21, Phil. Okay. That's what we keep telling ourselves.
Okay, 22 now.
Yeah.
All right.
But Jennifer Saravallo, as one researcher who has given me some good strategy language, one of her strategies, she refers to it as keeping our eyes and mind in the book. Now, when I read strategies written in that way, I think of that quite intentionally, that like it's been intentional. Keep eyes in the book and mind in the book. So if I've got my eyes in the book, I'm looking at the words. I'm not using other random, yes, I can be using illustrations as well, but keeping my eyes in the book is about reading everything that's on the page. So keeping my eyes in the book, I'm really holding to the page, and that's with accuracy, not letting that, not just making up things on the page, but I'm really keeping my eyes there. But keeping my mind in the book means keeping to what's being said there. But anyway, that's a big random thing.
Well, that was the first thing I was going to ask you, and maybe there's a chance for somebody who hasn't got the language yet in some of these areas to go to Jennifer Saravallo's book and to, acquire some of that language like you have.
Yes.
So there's a chance for people to give themselves PD in that.
Yes.
But the second thing I was really thought was great, what you did with that student, was that you gave him space to then say, what else I'm going to do now. He thought of that Post-it note idea, but you gave him the time to think of other things he could do. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
And that's probably from your experience as a teacher?
No, I tell you yes, but it's also part of the conferring process that I use.
Right.
So in the observation and listening part, which is quite swift, when I say I listen, observe for about a minute, I don't want that to be confused with, as came up, I don't want people to be confused with the idea that, oh, that's like the dibbles where they read for 1 minute and I time that and I see how rapidly and how many words they read. That's not what my minute is about. It's about just noticing what they are doing, but also what can I now help them with? What is something, and I'm not listening for more than a minute, because the more I listen, the more my teacher propensity is to go, ooh, there's so many things here I need to fix. That then we overwhelm the child with, there's so much stuff here, or we give the message that, oh, they're really not doing very well because we can see this, this, this and this.
Well, that's a really important point, to just make it a minute, and then, otherwise you are gathering too much information.
Yes,
really.
Yes. And in that minute, like I might not say, I'm going to listen to you for a minute. I tend to say things like, where will you be reading from? And I'll look and I'll say, okay, read through and read to about here. That might be a long paragraph's worth, or it might be, if there's a lot of dialogue, it might be half the page, but I'll actually indicate where they're reading to so that they know, okay, that's the sample of what they're going to be
there's this
doing.
Listening for a minute, and there's a language about where they start and where they end.
Yes.
But then after you've listened, you're then...
Right, now to get to this part, we're giving them space, which was a really good point. So then I've said to this young man, so I've asked him to tell me about, what's in those paragraphs, and he's then shown he didn't hold, the information.
And we'll take a break there from part 1 of our podcast. We look forward to you joining us for part 2. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. To make sure you don't miss any literacy learning tips and insights, please subscribe to our show on your favourite podcast player. At Q Learning, our literacy specialists draw on over 30 years of teaching and international consulting experience to deliver world-class learning solutions. We equip, empower and support teachers to become their authentic selves. To find out about upcoming webinars and about how Q can help you and your school, visit qlearning.com.au. And you can get even more amazing teaching resources right now at teachific.com.au. Stay tuned.